It's February 14th, Valentine's Day, and everyone on the professional circuit is saying "Be mine" to the Dubai Tour. But no points for winning the good graces of Taylor Phinney. Not that the BMC rider isn't discriminating, but after a motorcycle led him off course at the 2012 Giro, the crankiest soundbite he could come up with was "pretty disappointing." The dude is a bastion of positivity, and to recognize the holiday and counter my inherent cynicism, I'm going to do all of today's show inside this giant Taylor Phinney-rimmed heart. I'm not actually going to do that. It would be really hard for me to tell where my face is in the camera. Anyway, I might have been a little tough on the Middle Eastern races last week. Yes, the Dubai Tour did have everything but a t-shirt cannon shooting wads of money into the peloton, and yes, the race was decided in 12 minutes of racing on the first day, and yes, I still maintain that the echelons at the Tour of Qatar lose their novelty when they happen every dang stage, but it is nice to see cyclists, especially female cyclists, tweeting about how plush their accommodations are for a change. Plus, there's relatively little chance of anything catching on fire. Australia, I'm looking at you. Really, these Middle Eastern events make the meh attitude about... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Is it road season yet? Meh. Thanks. It makes the meh attitude towards this part of the season seem a little strange. That is, until you see an established European road event like the Mallorca Challenge. Despite being the California two-pitch of stage races, riders can just kind of drop in and out as they please, the narrow roads, sharp corners, and sudden elevation changes make it seem almost like a different sport from the windswept battles of the Arabian Peninsula. As a viewer, I think I'd be willing to pay money for the additional tactical depth and visual appeal of these early season European races, something which might lead to better conditions for the riders, but unfortunately the current structure of distribution makes it impossible for me to do that. The point is, it really is a road's ability to inject randomness into an event that makes a classic a classic. Strada Bianca's awesome, and it's what, 8? It doesn't have to be old, it just has to be good. Speaking of the classics, Stannard has said that he'd like to see Sky have fewer leaders this spring, after what was effectively a non-showing last year. Aside from being a really awkward way to say, I think I should be the leader, especially since Wiggins also wants to be the leader and we all know how good he is at sharing, it really reveals what may be a philosophical shortcoming inside the Sky program. Classics racing doesn't really conform to the whole hierarchical thing. Yes, there are guys whose sole purpose is to help and guys you want to protect, but teams seem to do best when they put as many different riders into positions to win as possible. Van Summeren, Volder, O'Grady, and dozens more have won major classics because their teams prepared for a variety of contingencies, not just the ones they thought were most likely or that suited them best. When you think about it, it might just not be possible to meaningfully spread marginal gains across so many different possible outcomes. But when one settles on a strategy, it can be difficult to change, as evidenced by Lance Armstrong in his recent piece on the 10-year anniversary of Marco Pantani's death. It's vintage Armstrong, a clumsy bit of revisionist history with all the eye-rolling unsubtlety of a blood bag. There are 3 mentions of Armstrong for every 4 mentions of Pantani, and the similarities that Armstrong stresses, namely that it's hard to be famous and then reviled and that they both did drugs, are a not-so-coy assertion that, hey, if you like Pantani, you should probably also like me. It's really just another Armstrongian step in his now year-long campaign to win at being forgiven. But it's sort of hard to see Armstrong as the only offender here. After all, his piece was only one of a week-long series on the late Italian's career. It was a series notable for having very little in the way of criticism. Yes, some finger-wagging here, a nod to the fact that doping is bad there, but I think without a critique from one of the thousands of cyclists whose names we never learned because drugs, it's a pretty shallow analysis. The same kind of thing that got us to this point in the first place. My stiff neck prevents me from having much of a taste for navel-gazing, but I was referred this week to an earlier piece that compared cycling to the city of Venice. It basically decided that the two are static, and that any notion of before or after is purely attributable to the desires of the observer. On some level, maybe, but objectively speaking, Venice was the city that invented, or at least paid for, what we now consider modern Europe. Since about 1700, it's been a tourist trap, and currently, right now, it's sinking. So yeah, the world does change. To act as if it doesn't is foolish. And the things that do endure, be they bike races, websites, pre-race, or media strategies, are the ones most able to change along with it. I'm Cosmo Catalano, and that was the week in bike.